Season is upon us. Kendall, thanks as always for your time. Let's just jump right in and start with Ole Miss, who is on a bit of a heater right now. They've won 9 of their last 11 overall, 7 straight, 7 of their last 9 in the SEC. You look at this Ole Miss team right now from where they were 2 weeks ago, and it looks like a different ball club.
It really does, and I thought the Missouri series. I think we both would agree, Ole Miss looked like a much different club that weekend. But I think we all kind of were a little hesitant because we're like, hey, A, they haven't been consistent all year long. B, they're also playing Missouri. But when you look at the way they pitched against Southern Miss in midweek, you look at the way they went on the road, and the thing I liked about Ole Miss on the road against LSU is in all 3 games of that series, the Rebels were the aggressor. And typically LSU at home, especially with that offense, they're more the aggressor. They're more the team throwing that first punch. And I thought Ole Miss did that throughout the weekend. They got some big innings out of Dylan DeLucia, Hunter Elliott, Brandon Johnson there in that last game, came in blowing gas and with that nasty changeup. And so all the pieces for Ole Miss are kind of falling together. And I guess if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're like, where in the world has this been all year? But you know what? It's better late than never. And as crazy as it sounds, if they won the A&M series and went on a wild run in Hoover, they could actually finish the season with a regional host. That's how ridiculous this is.
What would it take? You think they could win 2 against Texas A&M and not sweep, and then have a deep run in the SEC tournament and possibly host?
I mean, if you won 2 out of 3, you're sitting there with 15 wins in the regular season?
Right, 15 and 15.
Okay. Well, let's just say you get to Sunday. That would require winning 5 games. That would require winning 4 games to get there. You would
so
have
now you're talking 19 SEC wins.
Correct. Yeah, there is absolutely a pathway to get to a regional host. Now, with that said, you need if you're Ole Miss, you want LSU taking the series from Vanderbilt this weekend. You want Vandy's league record to continue to be around 500. And things like that. But there's a pathway. I mean, it's not the easiest pathway, but, Ole Miss has played well in Hoover before.
So when I look at these SEC teams that are projected to be hosts, I mean, Vanderbilt, I think most people think probably is a host, but they've only got 14 SEC wins despite having an RPI of number 3. Auburn at number 4 in the RPI has 15 SEC wins. And then you've got some teams that have got more wins, but maybe the RPI is a little bit lower. Texas A&M would be a great example. 17 SEC wins, but a 20 in the RPI. How do we make those things dovetail in predicting what the committee is going to do? How heavily they're going to look at RPI versus league wins?
Well, I think in a league like the SEC, you obviously have to look at unbalanced schedules. One thing about Auburn that, A&M and Arkansas haven't had to do is play Tennessee. And so if the difference in games is, let's say, 2 games or 1 game, the committee could easily look at those situations and go, you know what? They didn't have to play Tennessee. Auburn had to go on the road to face those guys. So, it's an unbalanced schedule. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is just going strictly by the SEC standings. I mean, if you're the committee, and let's just say, just for theoretical purposes, let's just say A&M outright wins the West, then and is ahead of Auburn by 2 games. I don't care if your RPI is 18 and Auburn's is 5. You should be a national seed in the top 8 over Auburn. So it'll be very interesting to see what the committee does because, as you well know by now, every year, everything's a little different in terms of the way they're thinking and what their reasoning is for different things. So they're going to have a little bit of a dilemma on their hands when it comes to the SEC potentially because of those RPI differences. And the other thing I don't like, and I don't know why this is something we're going to actually kind of dovetail into as we get or kind of dive into as we get closer to the postseason, is why here in the middle of May that we're seeing teams' RPIs drop 9 spots in a game they didn't lose. I don't think I've ever seen that before, and for whatever reason this year, that's occurring more often than not. So that's an issue right now.
There is, I guess, an issue that a lot of people feel strongly about one way or the other, and that's canceling games because of the effect of RPI. We saw Texas A&M do it. We've seen TCU do it. Ole Miss has canceled its game with Arkansas State that was supposed to be played tonight. And all 3 of those situations, even in a win, the winning team, if it was Ole Miss or TCU or Texas A&M, would have dropped in the RPI. Is it okay to do this?
It's a product of the system. It's like they say, don't hate the player, hate the game. And the fact is the game suggests that Ole Miss are dropping the RPI if they play tonight. So here's the deal. I've talked to two committee members today about this. Number one, I would not expect this to hurt teams this year. There's been a lot of speculation. Well, the committee is going to go keep, A&M or whomever out of a host site because they canceled a midweek game against Incarnate Word. That's not going to happen. I've talked to two committee members. That's not in the works. What I think is in the works, though, is revamping the system. And what I mean by that, one thing we propose as a staff to do in baseball is allow teams to drop their bottom 3 to 4 RPI games every single season. So, in the sense of Ole Miss, they don't have access to just copious amounts of high RPI teams in the middle of the week. They have to play the UT Martins of the world and teams like that. So let's not cause Mike Bianco to cancel those teams in the future. Let's give him an avenue to, by the way, still give those schools the opportunity to play a team like Ole Miss, but also, hey, we're going to allow you to drop that game from the RPI so it's like it never existed. So I know I know a couple of committee members that are actually going to bring that up in their meetings next week, and that's the pathway I hope they pick. Either way, they're going to tackle this issue, and I think next year we will have a resolution. It's either going to penalize you somehow, or they're probably going to do what I just told you.
That's interesting. Would that be win or lose? I mean, as if the game was just never played based on your lowest RPI team?
You're correct.
So Mississippi State, what was it, a year ago or 2 years ago, could take that loss that they had to Texas Southern that was an RPI bomb, and that just goes away as if it never even existed.
You are correct.
Okay.
And so what it does, here's what I like about it, too, and here's what I love about this, is if you're Chris Lemonis or Mike Bianco, and you're playing UT Martin on a Tuesday, guess what you can do? You can go out there and tinker and experiment with some guys that otherwise you probably never would, just to kind of see, moving forward for next year, like, hey, do we want to ride with this guy next year? Like, do we want to keep him around and give him a chance? So actually, I think it gives some kids opportunities that otherwise would probably never get an opportunity.
All right, what are we doing with Southern Miss? 20-7 in Conference USA. They lost game 1 against UTSA, but bounced back and won the series. You've been pretty consistent that if they win their last couple of series and play well in the conference tournament, they're going to be safe. Are you standing by that right now, sitting at 38-14 overall?
Yeah, I mean, their RPI is still around 20, and I think if they took care of business this weekend, their series, and took care of business in the conference tournament at the Pete, it's just hard to turn down a team that won, and in a conference in the top 7 RPI, turn down a team that won their regular season and has a chance to win their conference tournament championship. So let's assume they get to Sunday in that game. At that point, I think they're hosting. Louisiana Tech last year, if you remember, finished second in that league by 2 games. Their RPI was 28, and they hosted in Ruston. So that's kind of gives you an example of how they treated Conference USA teams in the past, and Southern Miss had a chance to win that league, get deep in the conference tournament, and probably have a much higher RPI than 28. So I actually think they're in pretty good shape as long as they take care of business this weekend.
Obviously, where we are, a ton of focus on Texas A&M and Ole Miss. Give me a 30-second thought on that series.
Oh, boy, it's just two teams playing outstanding baseball right now, and it's two teams playing very well offensively. So I've got a good feeling about Ole Miss at home, but every single time that I think A&M's about to take a step back, they play really well. So I think it's going to be just a total toss-up, but it's good to see Ole Miss playing well. This is a team that we thought all year long had the potential to play at this level. And to see them playing at this level with the postseason nearing, it's a lot of fun to see. And frankly, it's a lot of fun to see Mike Bianco kind of have a little bit of stress off his back going in his final couple of weeks.
Is the next most important, or maybe the most important series this weekend, LSU at Vanderbilt?
It really is. I mean, for LSU, if they don't win that series, they're not hosting. I just don't think there's a pathway to host it for LSU if you win that series. If you're Vanderbilt and wins that series, your RPI still keeps you in the mix. But they would need to go on a hellacious run in Hoover to be able to host.
All right, it's going to be a fun final weekend, and here we are once again. A lot still to be determined in the final week of the regular season.
Yeah.